age, so Daenerys was sent to Vaes Dothrak. On the other hand, Meereen lost its dragon and Daenerys, so this place was on the verge of collapse. The people of the Happy Organization caused trouble everywhere. They even burned the ships. After Daenerys did not bring food to Rhaego and Viserion, they did not eat anything. Tyrion thought that it was because they were chained. Dragons belong to the sky, not the dark dungeon. Then, Tyrion gathered all his courage and went to the dungeon where the two dragons were locked. He carefully talked to the two dragons. Tyrion said that he was their mother's friend. He came to help the two dragons, so he hoped they would not eat the people who helped him. After Tyrion gained the dragons' trust, he bravely unchained them. Then he ran out of the cellar in panic. After everyone finished negotiating, they decided to let Tyrion, Grey and Missandei guard Meereen, while Jorah and Daario went out to find Daenerys. The two headed north. Among the dense horse tracks, Jorah and Daario found Daenerys' ring. They immediately guessed that Daenerys had been captured by the Dothraki, so they followed the horse tracks to the Dothraki sanctuary. It was too early to save Daenerys, so the two of them started to act at night. That night, Daenerys went out to breathe the air with another widow. Suddenly someone appeared to control the widow. It turned out that Jorah and Daario had come to save her, but now Daenerys did not want to leave here. According to tradition, she had to live in Vaes Dothrak, but before that, she had to accept the judgment of the leaders. The leaders made fun of Daenerys and said rude things, but Daenerys did not get angry. She calmly said that they were not worthy to lead the Dothraki. The leaders had no intention of surrendering. Daenerys said that if they did not obey her, she would not be lenient. After saying that, Daenerys knocked down all the firewood. The fire spread immediately. The leaders rushed out the door, but the door was held tightly by Jorah and Daario. They had no way out. The Moro were extremely confused and scared. Did Daenerys want to drag them to death with her? But Daenerys was not afraid of fire. In the end, none of the leaders escaped death. The Dothraki watched the fire burn around them, and Daenerys stepped out of the fire. At this moment, she was like an angel descending from heaven. Everyone knelt at her feet. At this moment, Daenerys united the Dothraki. Jorah's life-saving act moved Daenerys. She decided to forgive him, but Jorah took a step back, and then he showed Daenerys his grayscale disease. When Daenerys saw Jorah like that, she was heartbroken and cried. This was also the first time Daenerys cried because of him. She recalled that Jorah had sworn to be loyal to her forever, and she ordered him to find a cure for her. When Daenerys conquered Westeros, she needed Jorah by her side. Jorah was moved and nodded when he heard this. When Daenerys' figure disappeared, Jorah turned and left. Daenerys then led the Dothraki back to Meereen. On the way, she smelled a familiar scent. It turned out that Drogon had returned. Drogon was like a playful child. He waited for his mother to be out of danger before returning. It was obvious that Drogon deliberately let Daenerys suffer. Daenerys rode Drogon and began to persuade everyone. She asked the cavalrymen if they were willing to cross the Black Sea with her. Would they be willing to conquer the Seven Kingdoms for her? And would they want to accompany Daenerys to receive the gift that the leader Drogo had promised? She affirmed that from now on and forever, she and the knights would always accompany each other. The majesty of the dragon made Daenerys' speech very favorable. Daenerys made 40,000 Dothraki knights submit to her. This was the power that helped her take back Westeros. On the other hand, the slave owners knew that Daenerys had left Meereen and began to attack. Meereen was now under threat. Everyone was discussing how to deal with it. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared before their eyes. Daenerys rode Drogon back first. She wanted to crucify all the slave owners on 10 crosses again, but Tyrion thought that killing people was not a good way. So Daenerys decided to give the slave owners a chance. The next day, she called them to negotiate. The three slave owners seemed to not understand the situation at all. They even thought that Daenerys came to surrender, so they said disrespectful words to her. At this time, the dragon's roar rang out. Drogon landed from the sky and stood next to Daenerys. If the slave owners did not wake up, then Daenerys decided to teach them a lesson. She rode Drogon into the sky. Rhaego and Viserion heard the call and rushed out. Daenerys ordered the three dragons to breathe fire and burn the ships. Daario also led the Dothraki army to Meereen. The result of this battle was indisputable. The three slave masters were scared to death when they saw this. Tyrion said that they had violated the agreement, so today someone had to die here as a warning, so they pushed the slave master with the lowest status to take the blame. Grey stepped forward and slashed the other two. Tyrion patted the slave master with the lowest status on the shoulder and told him to go back and tell the others that he was alive because Daenerys was merciful. Time passed very quickly. The Yara sisters brought 100 ships to submit to Daenerys. They hoped that Daenerys could help them take back the Iron Islands. Both sides cooperated with each other. Daenerys listened to Tyrion's suggestion. She let Daario stay because love is taboo in great affairs, because after Daenerys rules Westeros, she may need to marry to consolidate her position. So Daenerys cannot bring her lover with her. Daario fell in love with Daenerys at first sight. After Daenerys conquered Myron, Daario became her lover. He was the man who truly loved Daenerys, and he was willing to sacrifice his life for her. After Daario and Daenerys said goodbye to each other, Daario left. The image of him leaving would never appear again. When Daenerys ruled Myron, Tyrion constantly gave her good ideas. Because of Tyrion's ability and achievements, Daenerys awarded him the Queen's Arm Medal. At this time, Daenerys led a powerful army and 3 dragons across the Black Sea. She chose Dragonstone Island as her landing place. After more than 20 years, she finally returned to her homeland. Daenerys touched the land here and never let go. She wanted to be like her ancestors. She began to conquer the Westeros continent from this land. With Daenerys' current strength, taking the Iron Throne was really easy, but that would make her the Queen of Ruins, and in doing so, she would be no different from her father, the Mad King. The priest now prophesied that winter had come. When ice and fire met, endless darkness would cover the world, and in this dangerous hour, a brave messenger of light would step forward. The messenger would lead everyone against the darkness. The priest then introduced Daenerys to a man, the King of the North, named Jon Snow. Tyrion was surprised to hear that, and said he would write to him. If Jon Snow became an ally of Daenerys, it would be a great advantage. But Jon Snow's subordinates did not agree to let him go south, because the Starks who went south all had tragic ends, as did Jon Snow's grandfather, father and brother. However, Jon Snow was determined to go south because Dragonstone had a lot of Dragonstone, and Dragonstone could destroy the White Walkers. The White Walkers and Winterfell were only separated by a wall. When the White Walkers broke down the wall, the first to suffer were the people of Winterfell. Then Jon Snow went to Dragonstone. As soon as he got to the island, Drogon threatened him. When Jon Snow met Daenerys, Missandei introduced her title. Daenerys is the Stormborn of House Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne, rightful Queen of the Andals, protector of the 7 kingdoms, mother of dragons, ruler of the Great Grass, the Unburnt, the breaker of chains. Jon Snow is only introduced as the king in the north. When Tyrion sees the look of hurt on Jon Snow's face, he almost laughs. Daenerys then asked Jon Snow to bow his head in submission. Since Jon Snow was the king of the north, he naturally did not agree. He came to Dragonstone to ask Daenerys to cooperate against the White Walkers, but Daenerys had never met them before, so she did not believe him. The first time Ice and Fire met was not very happy. After Daenerys listened to Tyrion's advice, she agreed to let Jon Snow mine Dragonstone, because Dragonstone had no use for Daenerys, but a useless thing in exchange for a strong ally. This was not a loss for her. Besides, Daenerys thought that no one would risk their lives to tell a lie that was not beneficial to them. When Jon Snow mined Dragonstone, he found strange drawings. These were drawings left by the children of the Deep Forest. They depicted them fighting against the White Walkers. Only then did Daenerys truly believe that the White Walkers existed. She agreed to help Jon Snow fight them. When Daenerys emerged from the cave, the Tyrion was waiting outside with bad news. The Lord of the Iron Islands had made a surprise attack, almost wiping out his entire army. Yara was captured. Her brother Theon escaped. Although the Unsullied had taken Casterly Rock, they had fallen victim to Jaime's trick. The soldiers of Casterly Rock had long since retreated. They had secretly attacked Highgarden. Queen Olenna was poisoned to death because of Tyrion's plan and Daenerys' mercy. They lost many allies. Daenerys was furious. She never believed in Tyrion's less bloody plan again. Daenerys wondered if other people's soldiers were lives. So were the soldiers who sacrificed for her worthless? Weren't they living people? This time, Daenerys decided to go into battle herself. She would not be soft-hearted anymore. She had to avenge her allies. At the beginning, Jaime was still very confident, but the appearance of Drogon made him panic. Drogon breathed a stream of fire that broke through a line of defense. The Dothraki cavalry immediately charged into battle. Jaime's army was defeated very quickly. He summoned a team of archers to attack Drogon, but Drogon was thick-skinned and fat. Ordinary arrows could not hurt him. In desperation, Bronn took out his scorpion crossbow and shot Drogon in the right wing. Drogon knocked Daenerys from the sky, but before she hit the ground, Drogon used all his strength to breathe fire and burn the weapon that had damaged it. Daenerys was worried about Drogon. She got off his back to pull out the arrow. Jaime saw this and knew this was an extremely rare opportunity. He immediately rode his horse with a spear and charged towards Daenerys. Tyrion saw this from afar and muttered that Jaime should run away immediately. Tyrion was more worried about Jaime losing his life than about Daenerys. When Jaime was about to succeed, Drogon suddenly turned around. After the battle, Daenerys originally intended to recruit the remaining warriors, but some would rather die than surrender. Tyrion suggested locking them up for a while to let them sober up, but Daenerys firmly objected. She said that she had given them a chance. Daenerys had been merciful to them, but who would be merciful to the warriors who had died waited for her. Then Daenerys ordered Drogon to burn the 2 leaders to death. The rest of them saw this and knelt down one by one to submit to her. Daenerys rode her dragon back and stopped in front of a man. Drogon growled angrily at first, then recognized the familiar scent on the man. He slowly leaned in for affection. Yes, this man was not ordinary. He is Jon Snow, the current king of the North. But why was he so close to the dragon? At this time, Jorah had cured the grayscale disease and returned. Daenerys happily stepped forward to hug Jorah. Thousands of words were conveyed in this hug. Wasn't the grayscale an incurable disease? Why could Jorah cure this disease? It turned out that Samwell found a method to cure grayscale disease in ancient books, but no one had ever cured it before, and no one wanted to try this method because the treatment process was very painful. Jorah had to cut off all the infected skin and apply special medicine. Although Jorah was a strong person, when he suffered that pain, he still cried out in pain. Jorah thinks that as long as he can return to Daenerys, this little pain is nothing to him. On the other hand, Bran had seen the scene where the White Walkers began to attack. He immediately wrote a letter to inform Jon Snow. The fight against the White Walkers could not be delayed any longer. Daenerys would like to help Jon Snow deal with them now, but that would leave her vulnerable to Cersei's ambush. To convince Cersei of the White Walkers' existence and force a truce, Tyrion suggested capturing a White Walker for Cersei to see, and Daenerys agreed. This was a decision that she would regret for the rest of her life. Jorah formed a group to hunt down the White Walkers. In the middle of the snowstorm, they encountered a bear. After a while of fighting with the bear, they finally managed to kill it but lost one member. Thoros was also seriously injured. Soon after, they encountered a group of White Walkers. After fighting, Jorah's group captured one of them, but it screamed as if calling its comrades. Sure enough, the sound of hurried footsteps rang out. Jon Snow ordered his fastest subordinate to go back first to call for reinforcements. Because the White Walkers outside refused to leave, Jorah's group was surrounded all night long. Thoros was seriously injured and froze to death. Beric burned him immediately, otherwise he would have become food for the White Walkers. One of the men with itchy hands started throwing rocks. He took a rock and threw it at the chin of a White Walker. When he saw that they did not react, he threw another rock, but this time the rock rolled on the ice. The Night Emperor sent someone forward. After that person confirmed that it was safe, tens of thousands of White Walkers began to attack. When Jorah's group faced the relentless White Walkers, they were all desperate. Suddenly, a dragon's roar tore through the sky. Daenerys received a distress call from Jorah's group and arrived in time. A small rock led to a fierce battle. Drogon breathed fire and attacked tens of thousands of White Walkers. Daenerys quickly pulled everyone up, but Jon Snow was busy fighting and did not want to leave. At this time, the Night King, a javelin thrower, raised the javelin in his hand and threw it at Viserion's neck. Viserion roared and fell to the ice. When Daenerys saw her child sinking into the cold ice, she was in so much pain that she suffocated. At this time, the Night King was preparing to attack again. Jon Snow saw this and quickly told Daenerys to run quickly. After saying that, he was pushed into the lake by the White Walkers. Daenerys looked at Jon Snow and then looked at the Night King. She quickly ordered the dragon to fly away. If she hesitated, she would lose everything. As soon as Daenerys flew up, the Night King threw another javelin. Fortunately, Drogon was quick to dodge in time. After Daenerys flew away, Jon Snow crawled out of the lake. The White Walkers smelled the scent of humans and rushed forward. At this time, a man rushed forward. It was Jon Snow's uncle named Benjen Stark. He let Jon Snow climb onto his horse and stayed to fight. The White Walkers came in greater and greater numbers. The result was as expected. Daenerys returned to the wall and waited in pain. She finally waited for Jon Snow, who had just escaped death. Daenerys had to pay a dragon in exchange for a White Walker. She also conquered the King of the North, Jon Snow. A few days later, at the King's Landing meeting, Daenerys appeared majestically on a dragon. The meeting began immediately. Everyone witnessed the White Walker being captured. Cersei was horrified when she saw it. She agreed to fight against the White Walkers with Daenerys. She demanded that after they had punished the White Walkers, the people of the North must remain neutral and not participate in the remaining wars. But Jon Snow would not lie. He said that he was loyal to Daenerys, so he could not agree to this. Cersei was angry when she heard this and left. Tyrion was not satisfied and continued to advise her. Finally, Cersei agreed to send troops to help Daenerys. After Daenerys left, Jaime prepared to lead troops to the north. Cersei stopped him. It turned out that on the surface, she agreed to send troops to support Daenerys, but in reality, she wanted to benefit from this battle. Jaime was dissatisfied with Cersei, so he decided to go to support alone. Bran became a prophet. With his magical eyes, he knew Jon Snow's identity. It turned out that Jon Snow was not Ned Stark's biological son. He was the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Rhaegar was Daenerys' brother, and Lyanna was Ned's sister. Jon Snow's real name was Aegon Targaryen, and he was the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. In other words, Daenerys was Jon Snow's aunt. But now they knew this too late because Daenerys and Jon Snow were already in love. When Jon Snow had won Daenerys's heart, the Night King wanted to overthrow the wall. It turned out that the Night King had revived Viserion. After Viserion recovered, he changed from a fire dragon to an ice dragon. The ice dragon spat out green fire and continuously attacked the wall. The wall collapsed and collapsed continuously. Under the leadership of the Night King, the White Walkers' army set off south. Winter had come. The battle between ice and fire is about to begin. Forces gather at Winterfell. Before, when Daenerys was in Slaver's Bay, she was praised by thousands of people wherever she went. But when Daenerys arrived here, no one welcomed her. Jon Snow explained that the Northerners did not like outsiders, so they were cold towards Daenerys. At this time, 2 dragons appeared in the air. They helped Daenerys gain more popularity from everyone. Jon Snow saw his family and stepped forward to greet them. Then he introduced Daenerys to his sister Sansa. Bran interrupted and told the 2 girls to talk later. Now that the Night King had revived Daenerys's dragon, he also knew that the dragon had become an undead to do bad things, and the wall had been broken. After that, everyone held an emergency meeting, but the northern leaders still looked down on Daenerys. Jon Snow kept defending her, but it was ineffective. The meeting ended in discord. 2 dragons coming to the north would not fit in here. Daenerys took Jon Snow to check first. Then she invited him to ride the dragon with her. Jon Snow had never ridden a dragon before. He cautiously climbed onto Rhaego's back. Little did he know that Rhaego was quite fond of Jon Snow, but that didn't stop him from teasing him. Rhaego carried Jon Snow up and down, which scared Snow so much that he screamed loudly throughout the snowy field. Rhaego took Jon Snow and Daenerys to a waterfall. They hugged and kissed. The jogger standing next to him wanted to stop this sweet moment, but Snow was scared when he saw it. In the evening, Daenerys learned that Samwell had arrived and went to thank him, because he had previously cured Jorah of his gray scales. But Daenerys accidentally let slip that she had let the dragon burn Samwell's father and brother to death. Samwell cried out in pain after hearing this. After he walked out of the room, he met Bran. Bran thought it was time to tell Jon Snow the truth. At this time, Jon Snow was praying for his father, Ned. When Jon Snow said goodbye to his father, Jon Snow swore to his father that the next time they met, he would expose his father's origins. At that time, Samwell came to find Jon Snow. He revealed Jon Snow's true identity. Jon Snow's biological father was Rhaegar Targaryen. His biological mother was Lyanna Stark. His real name was Aegon Targaryen. Jon Snow was the heir to the Iron Throne. Jon Snow could not believe it when he heard that. Although he knew he was not Ned's biological son, he was not happy, because the person Jon Snow loved suddenly became his aunt. The northern customs did not prohibit as much as the Targaryens. Jon Snow did not know how to face Daenerys. He did not know how to face the White Walker army that was about to attack. Everyone gathered to discuss the battle plan. Bran said that the Night King's biggest target was him. Because Bran was a prophet, he had memories of this world in his brain. If the Night King wanted to conquer the world, he had to erase all traces of humanity first. So Bran suggested using himself as bait. The others would go out and lure the White Walkers first. Then they would find a chance to kill the Night King. This was an extremely dangerous battle. No one knew if they would survive or not. So many people began to make up for their mistakes and regrets. Jon Snow also told Daenerys his identity in the basement. Daenerys knew that her throne was in danger, because the first in line to the Iron Throne was Jon Snow. Before Daenerys could process the devastating news, the White Walkers arrived. When the 3 horns blew, the White Walkers arrived. Winterfell was in a state of war. The Dothraki cavalry took the lead, followed by the Unsullied. The Northern Alliance was at the rear. Theon led the troops to protect Bran. The battlefield was pitch black and nothing could be seen, so the priestess used magic to light all the Dothraki's weapons on fire, which gave them more visibility. The army's morale increased. Jorah led the Dothraki cavalry to attack the White Walkers, but before they could realize it, the White Walkers suddenly charged in front of them. The Dothraki cavalry was immediately caught off guard. The fires died out very quickly. The Dothraki cavalry was almost wiped out. A moment later, Jorah led a group of troops back. Everyone's faces were filled with fear. The White Walkers approached very quickly. They charged with overwhelming momentum. The Unsullied warriors, who had strong fighting power, could not hold out. The battlefield became deadlocked for a short while. Daenerys could not bear it anymore. She and Jon Snow rode the fire-breathing dragon, but the Night King was not an easy person to deal with. He immediately created a snowstorm. The battlefield, which was already invisible, became even darker. Daenerys and Jon Snow could no longer see the situation on the ground. They could only ride the dragon and fly into the sky. Suddenly, a stream of blue fire erupted. The Night King had summoned the ice dragon, but it disappeared very quickly. Back on the ground, Daenerys's allied army could no longer hold out, so they could only only retreat first. Grey ordered some unsullied soldiers to defend behind, trying to protect the retreating soldiers to hold the position. Although the White Walkers were extremely terrifying, even if they died, the Unsullied had to fulfill their responsibilities. They used their bodies to shield the retreating allies. When Grey saw his soldiers fall one by one, his heart ached as if someone was cutting it. He suppressed the pain and pulled the wooden bridge apart. All the Unsullied soldiers were held outside. They lit a fire, but the snow wind was too strong to light it. They could not guide Daenerys either. In the midst of the crisis, the priestess stepped forward again, but she had used up too much of her magic. She prayed for light, but nothing changed. And as the White Walkers were charging, the fire was finally lit. The battlefield turned into a wall of fire in an instant. The White Walkers were held outside. Daenerys also found a way to escape. She used dragonfire to help, but very quickly, the Night King did not want to joke anymore. He signaled with his hand. The White Walkers began to use their bodies as bridges, thanks to which they quickly crossed the wall of fire. Then the White Walkers continued to attack Daenerys's team. The situation fell into a stalemate again. Soon the wall could not bear it anymore. The White Walkers rushed in. Everyone was risking their lives to protect their homeland. At this time, a giant White Walker rushed in. It used one hand to throw Lyanna away. The Alliance was no match for it, but Bear Island had no weaklings. Lyanna stood up again and rushed towards it, but was caught again. The sound of bones breaking rang out. At the last moment, Lyanna pulled out her Dragonstone dagger and stabbed the giant. Then she and he died together. After paying a heavy price, the Alliance finally destroyed the Night Emperor. Because of that, Daenerys lost 80,000 Dothraki troops. More than half of the Unsullied troops were also sacrificed in the battle. If the Fire Dragon attacked, it would injure innocent people. Daenerys wondered what to do. Before returning to the city, Daenerys went to see Rhaego's wound. Daenerys saw that he was still healthy as before, so she was relieved. According to the plan, Daenerys led part of the army to Dragonstone Island first, waiting for the army to arrive before she attacked King's Landing. When Daenerys had just returned to Dragonstone Island, an incident happened. A crossbow shot hit Rhaego. The dragon had not yet recovered from the pain when it was hit by another crossbow. Rhaego cried out and fell into the sea. Before Daenerys could grieve, an arrow passed through her. The sneak shooter was Euron. He had served Cersei. Daenerys was angry because she pitied her son. She rode Drogon down to Euron, but Euron was prepared. Yet Daenerys could only dodge the arrows and turn around. To fly away, Euron, having lost his target, turned his fire on the Unsullied ships. After a wave of attacks, all the ships were destroyed. Everyone jumped into the water. When they got to shore, they found that Missandei was nowhere to be found. She had been captured by Cersei. At that moment, Cersei opened the city gates to let many people rush in. She knew Daenerys's weakness was mercy. If Daenerys wanted to take down King's Landing, she would have to harm innocent people. Tyrion and Varys also realized this and advised her very much. Finally, Daenerys agreed to negotiate. On the other hand, Jaime knew about this and thought about it all night. He still wanted to save Cersei. He said goodbye to Bran and went to King's Landing. The day of negotiation came very quickly. Tyrion said that as long as the enemy surrendered unconditionally, it would be much easier to negotiate if they released Missandei. But the envoy from King's Landing said that if Daenerys' side did not surrender, they would kill Missandei. Tyrion saw that the other side was so unreasonable, so he immediately talked to Cersei. He advised her not to be stubborn. If Cersei did not think about the people, then let her child go. But Cersei did not think she would lose. She had 20,000 gold-armored warriors, and she had just wounded Daenerys' dragon. If she had only killed the last dragon, how could Daenerys have defeated her? Cersei then stepped in front of Missandei, and Cersei asked her if she had anything to say before she died. Missandei had known that this day would come, but she had no regrets. She looked at Daenerys with determination and said her last words, which were also the words in Daenerys' heart. Daenerys watched Cersei execute Missandei, but could do nothing. Grey's heart was also cut like a knife. This ignited the fire of anger in Daenerys. At this moment, Daenerys understood the truth that being kind to the enemy is being cruel to yourself. Daenerys was heartbroken over the loss of her son and best friend, and in the blink of an eye, she seemed to have aged 30 years. No matter how strong Daenerys was, she was still a woman. The foreign invaders had not yet been quelled, so worries began to arise in Daenerys' heart. Varys was secretly plotting a rebellion. He thought that Jon Snow was more suitable to be king, so Varys poisoned Daenerys' food. Fortunately, she was so heartbroken that she went on a hunger strike for several days, which made Varys' plan fail. He encouraged Jon Snow to seize the throne, but Jon Snow had no interest in the throne. Tyrion found out and told Daenerys that he was still loyal to her. Tyrion believed that the Great War was coming, so there could not be a traitor in the army. Varys had sworn to be loyal to Daenerys forever. If he changed, the Great Dragon would burn him. Now Now Varys got what a traitor should get. The Battle of King's Landing was about to begin. Tyrion knew that he could not make Daenerys be merciful now, but he still begged her. After Daenerys heard the bells of the people and soldiers in the city, she nodded and then told Tyrion that Jaime, who wanted to go to King's Landing, had been captured by her people, so Tyrion should not disappoint her. Tyrion went to Jaime and advised him to ring the bell to surrender after finding Cersei. Then the two of them would escape from the tunnel and start a new life. Tyrion knew that if he freed Jaime, he would most likely be killed by Daenerys, but Tyrion still released Jaime on his own, because in the family, only Jaime was truly kind to him. If it weren't for Jaime, Tyrion would most likely have died young. The next day, the great battle was about to begin. Daenerys rode Drogon towards Euron's fleet. This time, she was smarter. Before Euron was ready, she launched her attack. Daenerys' anger exploded, and Euron's entire fleet was dealt with. Euron jumped off the boat and fled. He had just reached the shore when he met Jaime. The two of them saw each other and immediately rushed to attack. Jaime was hit twice. He counterattacked and stabbed Euron to death and continued to look for Cersei. In front of the city gate, the Golden Army fought. The Golden Army sensed the danger, but it was too late. The dragon breathed fire from behind. The Golden Army was immediately burned to death. The Golden Captain was still majestic just now, but immediately after that, he was chased down. He was completely unable to fight against such a powerful army. The dragon was probably fed before setting out, so its destructive power was great. Daenerys first destroyed all the poisonous scorpion crossbows, then there would be no more danger. She sat on the dragon's back and breathed fire indiscriminately below. Grey and Daenerys began to sweep the ground. Cersei's army had no ability to resist. They had not fought for long before they dropped their weapons and surrendered. Not long after, the surrender bell rang. The bell probably further stimulated Daenerys. She looked at the Red Keep in anger. Remembering Rhaego and Missandei, who had just died, she wondered why she had to be merciful, why those who committed the crime of surrendering could live. Daenerys rode Drogon back to the Red Keep. She began to massacre the people in the city. She was determined to avenge Rhaego and Missandei. While Tyrion and Jon Snow were still confused, Grey understood Daenerys' intention. He threw a long spear and led the army to continue the attack. Tyrion rushed to stab the guards to avenge Missandei, because she was the one he loved. Daenerys rode a dragon in the air and also breathed fire. Whether the people below were civilians or soldiers, if they chose to be Cersei's accomplices, they would be punished. Daenerys wanted to solve everything peacefully many times, but all were personally rejected by Cersei. When Daenerys chose to be kind, what did she get? Who created this hell in the end? What squeezed Daenerys' last kindness? Jon Snow saw the civilians die tragically, and he fell into a state of extreme self-reproach. He asked himself whether he was here to free them, or was he sending them to hell? Cersei knew that the situation was beyond saving, so she quickly left the Red Castle. On the way, she met the Hound, who came to seek revenge on his brother Gregor. The biochemical version of Gregor had long lost consciousness, but after he heard his real brother's voice, Gregor seemed to remember something. He didn't even listen to his creator. Cersei didn't dare to say much after seeing that scene. She was scared and quickly ran away. The Hound and his brother rushed into a fight. The Hound hugged Gregor and jumped down the castle to die together. When Cersei got down, Jaime just happened to catch up. The two hugged each other and cried, then helped each other to the tunnel. When they ran to the door, they found that the door was blocked. The two hugged each other tightly in fear. The massacre in the castle had finally ended. There were corpses everywhere, looking very miserable. Grey insisted on killing the prisoners, saying that it was Daenerys' order. Jon Snow tried every way to stop him, but because Grey was too stubborn, Jon Snow had no choice but to stand up and go find Daenerys. When he saw Grey Worm killing the prisoners, his will began to waver. Jon Snow wondered if this battle was right or wrong. Meanwhile, Tyrion trembled in fear as he entered the tunnel. He found his sister Cersei and Jaime in the ruins, and Tyrion pounded his fists on the ground in pain. He immediately regretted releasing Jaime. Tyrion thought that if he did not release Jaime, Jaime would only be imprisoned and not killed. After 8 seasons, Daenerys finally regained the Iron Throne. She thanked her loyal soldiers. Daenerys was extremely grateful for what they had done for her. Thanks to them, she had the power she had today, but the war was not over yet. Daenerys said that her army would not give up the spear because they had to save the people of the world, from Winterfell to Dorne, from Lannister to Qarth. The slaves had been exploited by slave owners for too long. She asked everyone if they agreed to save the slaves with her. Jon Snow and Tyrion immediately fell silent after hearing this. They understood that the massacre of the people in King's Landing might continue. When all the soldiers were cheering and jumping for joy, Tyrion walked towards Daenerys alone. She blames Tyrion for releasing Jaime on his own, calling it treason. Tyrion replies that he released his brother to save King's Landing. In front of everyone, Tyrion threw away the medal that Queen Daenerys had given him. Tyrion was then arrested by Daenerys for releasing Jaime without permission. Jon Snow watched coldly from the side, his heart filled with thoughts. At this time, Arya came to him. She reminded Jon Snow to be careful with Daenerys, because his true identity was a threat to Daenerys. Arya said that she could feel that she would harm Jon Snow. Then Jon Snow went to the prison to visit Tyrion. Tyrion reminded him that Daenerys's path to liberating the world had only just begun, and she would kill more people in the future. King's Landing was the clearest proof. Moreover, Jon Snow's true identity was a huge threat to Daenerys. Even if Jon Snow was loyal to Daenerys, Sansa would not be able to tame her. How would Daenerys handle it then? Jon Snow must make a choice quickly for the Seven Kingdoms and all the innocents. Time is running out. After Jon Snow listens to Tyrion's advice, although Jon Snow still shows loyalty to Daenerys, he is wavering and hesitant in his heart because he wants to do the right thing. Jon Snow had always done the right thing. Jon Snow hesitated for a moment and then went to find Daenerys. She was now in the Great Hall of the Red Castle. Daenerys finally saw the Iron Throne. It was like the immortal temple she had seen from the beginning. After 20 years, Daenerys had returned to this place. She reached out to touch this chair. At this time, Snow entered. He told Daenerys about the massacre of the people in the city. Jon Snow advised her not to kill the people like today. He begged her to spare Tyrion. Daenerys calmly said that they had no choice. Jon Snow was confused when he heard that. Then he kissed Daenerys and said she was his queen from now on and forever. After saying that, Jon Snow stabbed Daenerys with a dagger. Gradually, Daenerys stopped breathing. Drogon seemed to realize something. It flew over and gently shook Daenerys, but she did not move. Drogon angrily raised his head and shouted. It was about to breathe fire at Jon Snow. He was also ready to die, but Drogon breathed it towards the Iron Throne. The fire was like thousands of blades stabbing into the chair. This Iron Throne had killed so many people. Daenerys had pursued it all her life, but it was a pity that even when she died, she still could not sit on the Iron Throne. Then Drogon gently carried Daenerys and flew away to a faraway place. No one knew where it would go, but that place was definitely the most beautiful place in Drogon's heart. This movie ends here. See you in next video.